Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to thank you and the President and the administration for all that you're doing to really look at and roll back burdensome regulations that have prevented or greatly inhibited access for our hunters and anglers. We know how incredibly important that is to this nation, and we appreciate, too, your effort and your order to go to the agencies to ask them to identify any provisions there that would be inhibitory to access for our outdoors, and specifically for anglers and hunters. Those things, I think, are critical. These lands belong to the taxpayers. They belong to our citizens for them to be able to use. Those things, I think, are critical. We're happy, too, that this committee was able to pass the Protecting Access for Hunters and Anglers Act, which is a way to make sure that we're looking specifically at instances where policies are limiting access for hunters and anglers, especially with carte blanche bans and things that actually take away the ability for folks to use things like lead ammunition and lead fishing sinkers, all, when used properly, are responsible uses of our environment. Wanted to just get your perspective on if there are additional ways that you're looking at in balancing the stewardship responsibilities for these federal lands with access for the citizens, the owners of these public lands.
Well, access is a key focus that we have. And, of course, public lands were meant to be accessible by the public. That's why they're called public lands. And we inherited a situation where, in many cases, essentially the switch was turned to off and you had fight to get public access. We've sent out a secretarial memo to all of the people that manage it and say the presumption should be that these public lands are open to the public unless deemed for other reasons, whether it's for, fire danger, environmental reasons, something has to be closed or closed temporarily. But we have opened up hundreds of thousands of acres to hunting and fishing access. We're reviewing millions of acres more and trying to figure out a way to how do we get the red tape out of Americans actually having access to the lands that are theirs. And we know, of course, if you care about conservation, the largest donors to American conservation are hunters and anglers, and I'm not talking about billionaires. I'm talking about the people that shop at Bass Pro Shop, the people that do checkoff huntings, the people that that contribute to conservation groups, whether it's Delta Waterfowl, Pheasants Forever, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. The average American that is working on the land, hunting and fishing on the land, they're the ones that support conservation. And when we provide public access, we're supporting a $1.3 trillion outdoor recreation industry that employs 3% of America. So it is really appreciate your comments, and absolutely anything you can do or this committee can do to help ensure public access, we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I want to now talk, too, about the energy dominance agenda and the things that need to be done to make sure we're unleashing the energy here in this country, especially things that are underutilized, things like nuclear power, natural gas, the renewable energy sources here. It needs to be an all-of-the-above energy policy. That's the only way they're going to meet this demand. And as I go around and meet with electric co-ops and electric providers across the Commonwealth of Virginia, what I hear is a very gray scenario. And that gray scenario essentially means that there will be times where there will be power shortages. There will be brownouts. And I think people will be surprised by that because we haven't kept up with generating the electricity necessary to power this nation. I know that you have looked at a number of different ways for us to address those issues. In Virginia, we have an offshore wind project that is coming to completion, so that'll add some capacity to the grid. How do you view the necessary elements in the energy dominance agenda and what we need to do here at Congress to further lower energy prices? Obviously, there are a lot of things going on today, but we want to make sure that we are developing our own energy to put that downward pressure on energy prices.
Well, when we talk about reliable, affordable, and secure, those are the three elements that we look at. And of course, across that, nuclear is a key element. President Trump signed 4 executive orders last year. We've revived the entire nuclear industry. There's over a dozen different companies competing in this country on small modular nuclear. That has a bunch of advantages when those can come to fruition, because we can stop spending trillions of dollars on transmission. I mean, we can put the load generation right next to where the demand is, and that's going to be fantastic. Geothermal, we're close to some major breakthroughs there. Again, thanks to the all the hydrocarbon space, the oil and gas space, the precision drilling that's going on in the shale revolution is going to enable new levels of really low-cost, reliable, dispatchable 7x24 in terms of geothermal. And then hydro, Bureau of Reclamation, we're the number 2. We have 400 dams. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has 700. The federal government operates 1,100 dams. Many of them haven't been repowered in the last 30 or 40 years. I think we can get 20 or 25% more power out of that without coming to Congress, because we can probably get some of those done with private-public partnerships. But all of what I'm talking about is dispatchable base load to help counteract the over-rotation towards the intermittent weather-dependent sources.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Ansari. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Burgum, hi. As you are aware, the Colorado River is in a historic drought that is impacting water users throughout the entire basin. In my home state of Arizona, the drought is not only impacting municipalities and tribes, but threatening American semiconductors, national security, and critical agriculture production that rely on water from the Colorado River. As you're well aware, earlier this month, the 3 lower basin states of Arizona, California, and Nevada proposed a 2-year comprehensive package for near-term operations that will commit a minimum of 3.2 million acre-feet of lower division water savings, helping stabilize the entire Colorado River. Regardless of whether a larger 7-state deal is reached, the federal government has tools currently at its disposal to help mitigate the drought. The Deputy Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation testified at a Senate hearing in March that there is still approximately $1 billion available from the Inflation Reduction Act for drought mitigation in the Colorado River. To that end, will you commit to working with me and my colleagues in the Colorado River Basin to expedite the expenditure of remaining IRA funding, as well as identify other funding for durable projects that will help mitigate the drought basin-wide?
I would say yes, we're all hands on deck, and we've engaged with all 7 governors from the 7 basin states. We've had them meet in person in my office. We've had calls not just with the water commissioners, but this is all hands on deck issue. And the challenge is the lower basin states have been fantastic in terms of their conservation efforts and what they're putting on the table. But as you know, we've not been able to reach a 7-state agreement, and so we did execute under the drought authorities that we have through Interior and the Bureau of Reclamation to put a plan in, so at least the water users know what the plan is for this year, so that people can start planning. But yeah, the low snowpack this year comes at a time when we were already short, and so it's going to be the one thing I know for certain is that we're not going to have enough water for any of the 7 states. So looking for a solution on how do we get through with a resource that's a smaller pie when we don't like to have at a time when with economic development others we need a bigger pie.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with you on that as well. I also wanted to ask you about the department's interim Colorado River actions. In April, the department announced plans to release up to 1 million acre-feet from the Flamingo Gorge. Do you anticipate moving the entire 1 million acre-feet?
The current plan is estimated to that we would do the 1 million acres from Flaming Gorge. I believe the order that I signed indicates a 600,000 to 1 million, but the people should presume that it's going to be at the high range unless we have some events this summer that would drive new information into the hydrology, and we'll be making those hydraulic assessments almost every 2 weeks as we go through this season.
Got it. Thank you. I know the department also announced plans to reduce the annual release volume from Lake Powell to Lake Mead by 1.48 million acre-feet. Lake Mead is vital to Arizona's hydropower and water supply, and optimizing Lake Powell to Lake Mead release volumes is crucial to protecting Lake Mead from falling below critical elevations. If conditions change and Colorado River hydrology improves, would a reduction in Flaming Gorge releases only occur with a corresponding increase of Lake Powell to Lake Mead release?
Yeah, the answer to that is likely. Okay. But again, you're hitting on all the important topics, including power generation, recreation, water supply. It's a complex set of stakeholders we're trying to balance.
Thank you. And then lastly, I wanted to ask you about the Water Smart program. At a time when drought in the West is forcing us to do more with less water, Programs like WaterSmart are providing states, tribes, local governments, and water users with so many critical resources to plan for and implement actions to increase our water supply and modernize existing infrastructure. Unfortunately, the department's budget request for fiscal year 2027 zeroes out 6 critical WaterSmart programs. Given the current serious drought conditions we're facing in Arizona and all the 7 basin states that you highlighted yourself, shouldn't we be putting more money into programs like WaterSmart instead of cutting them?
The budget was put together before, at a time when we thought we still were going to have more significant runoff this year. So this is obviously something that we're taking a look at, because your statement is absolutely factual. That this is a time when we likely would benefit from additional resources that are not in the budget as originally created.
So you'd consider proposing something different in the future?
Well, the budget is the budget that's been submitted right now, but I'm just saying your observation is factual, which is that across those 7 states, states and private sector guys are always looking for grants to help drive these WaterSmart projects. Some are better than others. Some are effective. Some aren't. Some are great. But I think we again, this is a season when we have to look at everything.
I'll just end by, I just want to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from 142 organizations and stakeholders, which speaks to the importance of WaterSmart and the need for robust funding. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, this discussion over wind and solar compels me to point out that California has the largest portion of its electricity generated by wind and solar in the country. We are the second highest in our electricity rates. We're second only to Hawaii, that has ranks 3 in its percentage of wind and solar. That's a result. That's a choice made by the leftists in California, and directly affects the affordability of life in California. We also pay the highest gasoline prices by far in the country. Regular gas was up to $6.27 a gallon at Sacramento Airport yesterday. California's biggest fuel problem is not the war with Iran. It's the war on fossil fuels waged by leftist Democrats. In 1980, California was the second largest oil producer in the country, with 40 refineries producing everything our state consumed and then some. Due to massive regulations imposed by these leftist governors, last year we were down to 9 refineries. 2 have since closed. That leaves 7. Of those 7, 5 are now warning of imminent closures. 60% of our fuel is now imported. We've gone from producing 15% of the nation's fuel supply to less than 1%. Obviously, this is self-inflicted wounds caused by the fools who run California. But are there any steps that the administration can take to save us from these ruinous policies, bring down California's gas prices, and make the state less dependent on foreign oil?
Well, very clear-eyed analysis there, Representative. It is true that the California situation is not only causing high prices for citizens, but it's actually created a national security risk. Over 60% of California oil is now imported. And as you noted, with the collapse in the refining sector and no ability to really import any significant oil or refined products through pipelines, because those have also been blocked, creating California as an energy island from the abundant production we have in the U.S., is driving California's lowest prices during 2025, before the Iran war. The lowest prices for energy were higher than virtually every other state's highest prices. And so that they are kind of in a league by their own. They were the only state that was really dependent on any fuel or oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, and some of the refined product transverses the world. It leaves some ports, goes around the world, gets refined in Korea, and then comes to Long Beach or San Francisco to be offloaded. You mentioned electric prices. That's not a coincidence. The data from the Department of Energy will confirm that states that pursued a high degree of renewables while shutting down around baseload achieved about 50% higher electrical rates than states that did not do that. But of course, that mirrors the experience of countries like Germany and others as well. So it is, when you say, what can we do? One of the things we're trying to do is revive oil production in California. There's still abundant resources, and of course, the technology today to be able to extract that safely, environmentally safely, is there. But California then sues to stop us from that production or moving that production into the refineries.
Is that anything we can do about that? That's BLM land that's owned by the American people.
It is, but there's currently lawsuits by the state of California trying to block the movement of oil production to refineries. And as you noted, there are more refineries that may be shutting down. And so it's when we talk about the average price of gasoline in this country, it's, your experience is going to vary by state. We're going to have wildly different differences, and not just on gas. We're going to have wildly different outcomes in terms of where capital flows go, because no capital is going to flow for the entire AI revolution. People aren't going to manufacture artificial intelligence in a place where they've got high electrical rates. And those states that have been assuming policies that drive electrical rates and energy rates up are going to miss out on, there's estimated about $1 trillion of CapEx that's coming. It's not going to be flowing to those places that are opposed to having low-cost energy policies.
These are deliberate choices made by fools who happen to hold power in states like California, and we're counting on this administration to counter them wherever you can, particularly when we're involved in federal lands. I also just want to thank you on a personal note for responding to so many concerns regarding Yosemite management. We'd suffered a succession of incompetent superintendents who'd tolerated gross inefficiencies. They ignored many suggestions from gateway communities to improve the visitor experience. Under Yosemite's new superintendent, Ray McPadden, these deficiencies are finally being addressed. He's instituting a large number of improvements that have been advocated by the gateway communities for over a decade. He's meeting regularly with local representatives and businesses and residents, and on behalf of the gateway communities that I represent to the Yosemite Valley, thank you very much for your responsiveness to these concerns.
Gentlemen, as time's expired, the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Dingell, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Mr. Secretary. As co-chair of the Great Lakes Task Force, I know that the Great Lakes are far more than a natural resource. They're more than 20% of the world's, not the United States, the world's fresh water, and they're an economic engine for 2 countries and many states. They are our drinking water, our economy, our jobs, our recreation, and a way of life. More than 30 million Americans and Canadians rely on the Great Lakes for clean drinking water and their livelihoods. Mr. Secretary, we need to protect our drinking water and our economic security. I think you believe that's the case also, but budget cuts might indicate otherwise. How can we work with you to make sure we are protecting the Great Lakes, which budget cuts are not going to do right now?
Well, I think Congresswoman, that we'd be happy to work with you on anything that would protect the Great Lakes. It is such an important resource. If there's anything specific you have, be happy to, if you reached out to us, happy to do that. It'd be great to hear about it.
So I want to say to you point blank, we can't monitor toxic algae blooms, invasive species, or water quality if we fire all the scientists doing the work, the way that's written into the budget. So how do we, I don't want to tell millions of families across the Great Lakes region that safe drinking water is now something too expensive to protect. So if we specifically go to the Great Lakes Science Center in Ann Arbor, under your 2027 budget request, this center is effectively shut down. The center lost approximately 20% of its staff last year, and now, with what was submitted, you're eliminating 108 of those 137 positions. That means, the staffs haven't been cut yet, but they've been told that they're going to be. You want to zero out the budget. You can't test water when there's nobody there. So what can we do about that?
Well, I think we should have a conversation offline and take a look at this. Obviously there are the core. You're describing core functions.
Yeah, they are core functions.
Yes, and there's a lot of things that have been happening that are not core functions, and we're trying to make sure we're staffed appropriately to address those core functions.
I mean, and it matters because, we have to tell, they're coming to me. Which lakes are you no longer going to receive invasive species monitoring for? What fish are we not going to protect? Which communities, and it's not just mine in Michigan, down to Marcy Captors, are going to lose the data that they rely on predicting flooding and harmful algae blooms. And it's not just there. It's Minnesota, it's New York, it's Canada. So, and I'm going to say this to you. You often talk about running government like a business. The Great Lakes fishery supports a $7 billion economy. The Great Lakes Science Center costs $15 million annually. I don't consider that a waste when it's protecting the drinking water of 30 million people and a $7 billion economy. The ROI is nearly 500 to 1. So do you believe it's good business to jeopardize the $7 billion economy and the region's source of clean drinking water just to save that $15 million?
What I'd like to do is work with you to make sure that we're supporting all the key core functions that need to occur out of that science center.
Okay. There are a lot of issues, and I want to know what I'm going to say to a lot of people who are really upset in all branches. So I'm going to count on that. Actually, Mr. Wahlberg and I are going to invite you to Michigan, too. But, Mr. Chairman, for the record, I somehow have become I care about gray wolves and bats. So I'm going to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a Wall Street Journal article published 2 days ago reporting that the White House is moving forward to reduce protections for gray and Mexican wolves as an economic handout to the cattle industry, which of course means that reduced protections are not based on the best available science.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. And I'll yield to the ranking member, Mr. Huffman, my 42 seconds.
I thank the gentlelady. Mr. Secretary, just very quickly about Freedom 250. I want to just ask if you directed anyone at the National Park Service or anyone else at Interior to form the Freedom 250 LLC. Did that come from you?
No.
Do you know who did? It happened under your watch. It involves your agency. Who made that decision? Who ordered that?
I'm not aware of the final decision maker on Freedom 250.
Would you get that information to us, please? I think that's significant.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yield back.
Time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary, for being here, giving your time up to come and testify before us. And thank you for the work, your good work, great work you're doing in promoting the President's America First agenda. So thank you for that. I have some questions. The Department of Interior released a map in November dealing with potential gas and oil leases for the years 2029 and 2030 in the eastern portion of the Gulf of America. How will Department of Interior balance those interests with Floridians and with the necessity of maintaining American energy dominance?
Relative to the Gulf, of course, as you said, the balancing is key. And I think as we go through that long-range planning, there's a process where you start with a big scale and it keeps winnowing down. We're in the middle of that process right now. If there's specific input that you have, we'd love to hear from you as we go through the next round following the law in terms of us holding required leases for offshore energy production.
So the President Trump's proposed budget proposal is transferring the National Marine Fisheries Office and also Protected Resources and also the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Those responsibilities were given to the U.S. Fish and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Can you share the goal of reducing red tape and making government more efficient?
Well, effectively today, as it relates to certain fish, we have 2 endangered species lists. There's the one that's under NOAA, under marine fisheries, and then there's the one that's under U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And of course, these create conflicts without doing anything to protect, wildlife. You've got two different agencies, two different sets of procedures. Companies on the same water course have to deal with two different ESA approaches, and it just is common sense that they should have to deal with one, and that all of the, all the aquatic marine mammals or fish are all managed in one area relative to endangered species. And so this is taking, those scientists and staff from NOAA and bringing them into U.S. Fish and Wildlife at what I call a unification. It's not a cut, but a unification of those functions so that we can get a single process for managing those species.
So do you think that'll reduce redundancies and streamline efficiencies?
Absolutely. I mean, the objective is to, protect the species, but it's also to make sure that we're not creating duplication and redundancies. And this is a poster child for redundancy, because in the same water course, you could have two different federal agencies coming up with two different sets of rules. It's very confusing for states, for counties, for water boards, and for, wildlife organizations. I mean, it's a long overdue simplification.
Okay, so what permitting reforms do you think are needed for pipelines and gathering systems, export facilities, transmission and infrastructure, supporting oil and gas production?
Well, I think permitting for all projects in this country has become incredibly burdensome, and there's an estimated $1.5 trillion of capital that boards of directors, states, companies, small businesses have committed to spend, but they're waiting to get a permit to get it done. I mean, we're creating a huge logjam through red tape that is preventing our economy from really reaching its fullest potential and adding really no value. And so, again, I know there's legislation in front of Congress. I would encourage everybody to keep driving forward on that, because if you care about affordability and care about all the things that people say about the economy, about working class people, then one of the biggest things that Congress could do is pass a permitting reform bill that would allow us to build the infrastructure which lowers the cost for Americans.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Washington. Ms. Randall, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Secretary Burgum, for appearing before the committee today. I represent Washington's 6th District, which includes the most popular national park in our state. In 2024, Olympic National Park welcomed over 3.7 million visitors, contributing $380 million to our local economy and supported almost 3,000 jobs. A huge impact. Tourism and natural resources-based jobs are the foundation of our community and are critical for my neighbors in the 6th. However, peak hiking season is just around the corner, and our local partners are worried that they won't have the staff they need to keep trails open and keep hikers safe this summer, let alone be able to empty trash cans and take care of bathroom facilities like this that we've seen on Cairo News lately. Last year, the Trump administration doged 4,000 national park workers, and you're requesting a 25% cut to the National Park Service in the president's FY 2027 budget, eliminating another 3,000 jobs. For example, Olympic National Park is down to only one permanent staffer on their fisheries team. 12 federally recognized tribal nations also reside and thrive on their ancestral lands that are part of my district. And as Secretary of Interior, you manage federal lands, natural resources, national parks, and wildlife, and you are charged with honoring this country's promises to tribal nations and carrying out our trust and treaties responsibility. Mr. Secretary, you are not meeting the mark. I'm deeply concerned about the state of deferred maintenance across all of our parks, staffing reductions, and upholding our commitment to tribes. And I'm hoping you will commit to working with me to better serve the American people. Secretary Burgum, you've been very clear as you cut Park Service staffing and budget that you want to redirect resources from headquarters in Washington, D.C. and regional offices to the field so that visitor experience is maintained. Is that a correct characterization?
Yes.
Thank you. And so I'm surprised by this budget request because it seems to me that you are more focused on D.C. over roads, trails, and buildings in our national parks across the country. For example, Your budget asks for $10 billion for a new, and I'm quoting here, presidential capital stewardship program for priority construction and beautification projects in and around Washington, D.C. At the same time, your budget asks for less than $3 billion for repairs and maintenance in parks in the rest of the country next year. So that's $10 billion for new preservation in D.C. and less than $3 billion for parks and maintenance across the country. You're proposing that the vast majority of funding for park construction be spent in D.C. at the direction of President Trump, not in our communities. This is wrong. It's misguided. Here's a photo from one of my neighbors hiking on the North Fork of the Quinault Trail in the Olympic National Park. This is a popular trail taken by young families and is very clearly a safety hazard. There's a backlog of $300 million in deferred maintenance and repairs needed for Olympic National Park alone. And we have another photo, AI image that President Trump posted about a beautification project that he wants done in D.C. This project would drain the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial so the bottom can be repainted or resurfaced in blue instead of white. And you're actually in this image, Secretary Burgum. Of these two images, which do you think should be the higher priority? Fixing a bridge that is a safety hazard for hikers or changing the bottom of the reflecting pool?
Well, my answer would be both, and that's why we're encouraging this committee and Congress to pass the GOA.
Please don't dodge my simple question, Mr. Burgum. Which is the more urgent maintenance?
I'm not dodging. We have deferred maintenance issues all over the country.
Yes, we do. You are prioritizing $3 billion for those nationwide deferred maintenance projects and $10 billion for capital preservation in D.C. I can tell you that my neighbors. This is my time, thank you. And I believe
but if you're
most
asking me
Americans,
questions, am I not allowed to answer? Or is this
I
just
asked
work?
you a simple question. You decided to
well,
go off on a tangent.
You answered a question with a false hypothesis.
It's my time, Secretary. Most Americans think that it's much more urgent to improve public safety in the national parks and make sure everyone can safely enjoy the outdoors. But in fact, you find President Trump's vanity projects more important because you waive procurement rules to issue an emergency no-bid contract worth over $10 million to repaint the reflecting pool. And I see that my time has expired, so I will end by asking for unanimous consent to enter into the record these two articles from the New York Times: reflecting pool repairs to cost $13.1 million. Trump had promised $1.8, and reflecting pools repairs uneven and behind schedule.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at some point, do I ever get to address the false and misleading statements that are being made during some of these exchanges?
You can address those in writing. And
Can I just say one for everybody so we don't have to keep covering it, which is we keep citing this thing that there's 25% reduction in the national parks. I would ask the members and their staffs to take a look at two things. One is we're taking all the firefighters out of the national park system and putting them into the wildland firefighting. So that's part of that, quote, 25% reduction, but they're not going anywhere. They're going to a unified force. Then there's another 2,000 people that are being moved across comms, HR, and IT that were spread all over the country, sometimes working remotely, that are being unified into centralized groups so we can do all the best stuff across those things, better, cheaper, faster. That also pulls things out of the national park budget and puts it into the secretarial office budget. So a huge chunk of that 25% didn't disappear. They're just being put to work in places where it's more
Chairman, I don't know where
effective.
this time is coming from for all of these for all this spin.
Speaking of time, we're right up against our 12 noon break we said we were going to take. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. There is food for members in the back office, and then we will reconvene for questions after that. The committee stands in recess.